You have been doing everything the way you were taught to do it. You show up, you work hard, you try to be responsible with money in the ways that responsible with money was explained to you growing up. You save when you can, you spend carefully most of the time, you think about the future in the abstract way that most people think about the future, which is with a general intention to handle it properly when it arrives. And yet, the number in your account at the end of most months is not dramatically different from what it was at the beginning of most months, and you cannot fully explain why. Not because you were not trying, because you are trying in ways that feel genuinely effortful, and the result is still not matching the effort you were putting in, and that gap between what you were putting in and what you were getting back has started to feel like something specific, like evidence of a ceiling you cannot see but keep running into. Here is what that ceiling actually is. It is not a skill gap. It is not a knowledge gap. It is not even a discipline gap in the way most people use that word. It is a psychology gap. And until you understand what is happening in your mind every time a financial decision presents itself, you can add skills and knowledge and discipline indefinitely and still find yourself in the same conversation with the same count balance at the end of the same month, wondering why the math never quite works out the way you calculated it would. This is about the 6 psychological patterns that keep people broke regardless of income, and they start earlier than you think. Before you ever earned your first dollar, someone was teaching you what money meant, not in a classroom, not intentionally, in the language of the household you grew up in the things said at the dinner table when a bill arrived, in the way the adults around you talked about people who had more and people who had less, in the silence around certain topics, and the anxiety that filled the space where openness would have been. You absorbed all of it before you were old enough to evaluate it, before you had any frame of reference for what was a belief and what was just the air in the room. And whatever you absorbed in those early years became the operating system that runs underneath every financial decision you make today, quietly, automatically, before your conscious mind has finished forming an opinion about the situation. There are 4 versions of this operating system, and almost everyone runs one or some combination. In one version, you believe money is essentially corrupting, that wanting it says something unflattering about who you are, that the people who have it got it by taking something from someone else. You may not say this out loud, you may not even consciously think it when the thought is presented clearly, but somewhere underneath your behavior is a script that says, people like me do not chase money, and doing so would make you someone you do not want to be. So you do not chase it. You work hard and you do meaningful things, and you quietly undercharge and underinvest, and wonder why your financial life never seems to reflect the effort your actual life contains. In another version, you believe money will solve everything, that the anxiety you feel, and the relationships that are strained, and the general low-grade dissatisfaction that follows you through weeks that look fine from the outside will all resolve once the number gets large enough. So you chase the number obsessively, and when you reach it, the satisfaction lasts approximately as long as it takes to identify the next number that will finally be the one that did what the last number did not do. The chase is the point, because the chase is a substitute for the stillness that would require you to sit with questions you have been running from. In a third version, you tie your self-worth directly to your net worth. You spend to signal membership in an income bracket you have not yet fully reached, because the gap between where you are and where you need to be to feel okay is something you bridge with purchases rather than patience. You feel a specific anxiety when someone around you appears to be doing better than you financially, that has nothing to do with your actual needs and everything to do with a comparison mechanism that was installed long before you were old enough to know it was running. In the fourth version, you are a chronic saver who never feels safe, regardless of what the account balance says. You spend below your means consistently. You avoid risk religiously. You feel a low, persistent anxiety about money, even in months when the numbers are genuinely fine, because the anxiety was never really about the numbers. It was installed long before the numbers were large enough to justify it, and it simply scaled up alongside your income, never quite leaving regardless of how much you managed to accumulate. You are probably one of these. You may be a combination of two.
The first step is not changing it. The first step is seeing it clearly enough to call it what it is. A script you inherited, not a truth you discovered, not an accurate reflection of how money works or who you are. Someone else's thoughts that you took on before you were capable of choosing to take them on. And once you can see the script, you can begin the work of writing a different one.
Here is the second pattern, and it is one that operates so subtly you can miss it for years. You have a number in your head for what someone like you earns. Not a number you sat down and consciously decided on, a number that assembled itself from the environment you grew up in, and the people around you, and what your first salary felt like, and what the raises since then have trained you to expect. And that number functions like a thermostat in your financial life. When you fall below it, you work harder and feel stressed until you get back to it. When you approach something significantly above it, something in you starts creating friction, second-guessing, finding reasons the opportunity might not be right, talking yourself out of things that would require you to operate at a level your self-concept has not yet updated to include. You do not do this consciously. That is the problem. Consciousness is where you know you want more. The subconscious is where you have defined what someone like you is worth, and it defends that definition with more efficiency than you can override with willpower alone. In one version of your life, you stay in the range, not because the range is the limit of what is available to you, because the range is the limit of what the version of yourself you carry in your head believes you are worth. Every time something larger presents itself, the internal thermostat runs before the opportunity can fully land. You find reasons it will not work. You talk about it rather than moving on it. You watch someone else take the same opportunity and wonder afterward what they had that you did not. In the other version, you do something specific. You write down honestly the sentence that describes how you currently see yourself financially, not the aspirational version, the real one, the one that runs automatically. Then you write the one you are choosing to replace it with, not because you believe the new one yet, because you are going to read it regularly until the reading builds a bridge between where you are and where you intend to be. The identity upgrades before the income does. Always. The income follows the identity, not the other way around. And treating this as soft or motivational misses the structural reality that your self-concept is the most important financial variable in your life, and it is one you can actually work on. Here is the third pattern, and it is the one that most directly explains why people with reasonable incomes still arrive at certain ages with almost nothing to show for decades of earning. You were trained from the beginning to consume, not explicitly, culturally. Every advertising message you have ever received in your entire life has been oriented around the same instruction. Take the money you have and exchange it for something. The entire consumer economy is structured around making that exchange feel good, feel earned, feel like an expression of identity or success or care or reward, and it is extraordinarily good at what it does. The distinction that most people never clearly learn is the one between things that take money out of your life and things that put money back into it. Things that lose value the moment you own them versus things that grow in value or generate income while you are doing other things. A car loses value the moment you drive it off the lot. An investment in a skill that increases your income pays you back every year for the rest of your working life. A designer item depreciates immediately. A rental property generates income monthly. In one version of your life, you filter every purchase through the question, "Can I afford this?" It feels like responsible thinking. It's actually a very low bar that allows almost anything to get through, because "can I afford this" usually just means, will this overdraw my account, or will I be able to make the minimum payment? It says nothing about what the purchase is doing to the financial trajectory of your life. In the other version, you filter every purchase through a different question. Will this pay me back? Does this put money in or take money out? Is this building something or is this consuming something? That reframe doesn't eliminate spending, it redirects it, and the cumulative effect of redirecting spending toward things that compound rather than things that depreciate is a financial life that looks genuinely different over a decade from the one that did not make that distinction.
Look at your last 10 purchases. Label them honestly. The pattern you see is your current financial operating system expressed in actual behavior. The fourth pattern is the one that sounds the most abstract and is probably the most concretely destructive. You operate from scarcity. Not because you have nothing, sometimes with quite a lot. The scarcity is not a description of your bank account, it's a description of your psychology. The persistent low-level belief that there is not enough, that what you have could disappear, that if someone else succeeds, it somehow reduces what is available to you, that the appropriate response to money is to hold it tightly rather than to put it to work. The scarcity mindset makes you risk-averse in ways that cost you more than the risks you avoided would have. It makes you short-term in your thinking, because short-term thinking is the thing your nervous system defaults to when it believes resources are finite and threatened. It makes you hoard rather than invest, protect rather than build, and it produces a specific kind of thinking that is self-confirming. Because if you never invest and never take calculated risks and never put money anywhere that could grow, you end up with less over time than you would have had if you had made different choices. And the smaller amount confirms the original belief that there was never enough, and the cycle tightens. In one version of your life, you stay inside the scarcity frame. Every financial opportunity is evaluated through the lens of what you could lose rather than what you could build. Every investment feels like exposure rather than growth. You save to protect rather than to compound. And the protection produces a kind of stasis that looks like safety and is actually a slow financial retreat because inflation is doing to your protected money what you were too afraid of losing to let it do to itself.